Let's talk about it.
Hello and welcome to Thicc Radio, the podcast where we talk about gaining and everything in its orbit. I'm James.
And I'm Tim, so let's get into it. Today we're joined by a special guest. You know them, you love them. It's Trey.
Trey, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited.
Yay, oh, I'm glad. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's had a day off, spent time with family. It was beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Very beautiful.
I love that. Well, listen, tis the season. Tis the season for family, for friends, for socials, for just all that good downtime, just chilling, vibing, all that good stuff. So, Timbo, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about admiring, which is kind of a new concept to me because I used to think that encouraging and admiring were synonymous, and now I'm finding out there is a bit of a separation. So.
Yeah, it's also been an interesting thought conversation with some other members of the community. You know, shout out Bigger is Best 7, who you know, they themselves use a different label, and we will probably do an episode on that as well. Just, you know, to flag that to the listeners. But you know, it's kind of this interesting conversation where I think we've always just kind of gone, there's gaining and there's encouraging, and that's that. But actually, everyone you talk to who falls into those different camps approach it for different reasons and approach them both in different ways. And I think it's understanding the merit and understanding the application of those different terms and that language that leads to a broader understanding of not only the people that are in this community, but the potential of experience that's in this community. And that's not trying to get too meta, too deep, too quick in this episode. But, you know, just to put it out there to the listeners, there is so much more to who we are and what we do than just getting fat and being fed. There's so much more to that. And this is going to be one of those episodes. So, Trey, you ready, baby?
Yeah.
Okay. So, listen, first things first, how do you personally define the concept of an admirer?
I would say at the end of the day is the admiration and finding the beauty and not expecting what's the word, like emphasizing on the beauty of fat, and to the point where like you prefer or like just admiring fat. You're someone that admires fat on the body. You find it sexy. You find it for me, I find it very masculine because of it's like a size thing. It like I've read I know what was his name, BB Encourager. I know his actual name but he wrote a book called The Round World, and like I like how he said like some people are like to look at it as in terms of a power way, and some people look at it as in terms of like beauty. So it's like I like it as the both. So to me, admiration of fat is just at the end of the day saying I like fat's hot.
And this is without taking an active role, as in like you're not the one encouraging, because I can't think of any other euphemism. And that's that's another label anyway. But so you don't like actively encourage the gainer to keep eating, or you don't like like feeding the gainer. Is that like a totally separate thing for you?
I think so. I was thinking about this, and I was just like, I think in a way, everyone in the community is a admirer, or that's what brings them in. So the other labels are more of the actions that they do, you know? So for me, the reason I say admire, like admirer, chaser, encourager, all those things is because I'm all those things, but it depends what I'm doing, and it depends on the person. I am, and many times I'm not, I don't meet up or see a lot of gainers in my day-to-day life. So like, so usually when I see a stranger and I find them hot, like I know the very little likelihood that he's probably a gainer, you know. So I go more into the admirer slash chaser if I'm looking for some, or you know, a role. Like
I like the way that you put that, because that kind of makes it the gateway to everything. You know, we're all here because we admire fat on the male body. So that is sort of the entry point to everything else.
mm-hmm. In fact, I like, before I learned about gainers and feederism and all that, the I well, I heard about bears. I remember in high school, like all of a sudden I was just like, I knew where I was different. At that point, I came out to some people as bi, but I knew I was different because I liked bigger guys. I remember being a freshman, and then being surrounded by these seniors who have a little more grown bodies than I do, you know. And like some of the seniors I were with were just like very hulkish, and then some were just like had like really big bellies, and sometimes I was just like, and I remember like one person I was in band with, like I remember he was thick, but he had an ass that was amazing. Anyway, but long story short, I heard about bears from like an old Logo documentary, and I was just like, that's what I like. That's what I like.
I kind of want to ask, because we've been talking a little bit about, you know, how you've done encouraging, and I agree with Tim. I love how you described that there is this distinction between, you know, people who just love gainers for what they do. You love to appreciate the transformation and result and the hard work, but that's a distinction between that and people who want to participate and people who want to take an active role in the growth, in the feeding. You know, I almost see that then as the evolution, where admiring is just going, I like what you did, keep up the good work. Obviously, you enjoy that sexually and whoop-de-woo. Encouragement is, yeah, I'm going to tell you and encourage you to eat more. And then you got the extreme end of that, which is feeding, which is not only do I want you to eat more, I'm going to take such an active role, as in I will put the food in your mouth. I will facilitate your active growth by my own physical efforts. You know, so I kind of love that as like a sort of understanding spectrum of, you know, where people can be and where people wind up, and at every point is valid, you know. So I think that's beautiful. I'm curious to know, just because as we say, this conversation around language and words is developing, changing all the time. You know, another one that more civilian types might be aware of is chub and chaser. Because chub chaser is kind of seen to be its own thing in a sense. I think it's treated sometimes like we are connected, but I often think we're not. Chub and chaser feels very much like the gainer dynamic, but without kind of acknowledging growth in a sense. It's more like just fat people who whoop-de-woo with the skinnies sometimes and bloody blah. So my question for you here is, do you feel that there is much difference between an admirer and a chaser?
Like there's times where like I am kind of act more like a straight up chaser, but there's also times where it's just like I don't like kind of the deal of like, it makes me sound predatory, especially since me being a slimmer guy is the world's kind of flipped, where like I kind of seem kind of predatory, you know, and especially when it comes to those that aren't into gaining, because it comes to the fetishization of it all plays a role on kind of how the interaction goes, you know. Like that's why sometimes I don't like the word chaser, sometimes I don't care, but I just don't like how the fact that it makes me kind of seem like a predator, because I know how it's like to be fetishized just because I'm of the color of my skin.
Well, you know, maybe that's a question that we should ask here, because as a person of color, do you feel like there is correlation there? Obviously, they're not identical. They could never be identical. But do you feel like there is correlation between those fetishizing elements and how larger bodies are pursued? And do you feel that it maybe gives you a different perspective, because in this sense, the shoe is on the other foot for you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So for me, I guess that's why I kind of take a little bit more. I try to be as respectful as I can, because I really have, because I've been in situations where it's just like, you only like me because you want that Wakanda dick, or you like that Wakanda look. Okay, so it's just like yeah, but can I swear?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Please do.
Because my ratchet self might be throwing in bombs, and no offense to y'all, but like I know when people like niggas. Okay, so I just I can tell. There's some people make it very apparent. So like, to me, it's just like to me, when I'm interacting with someone, I at first, the first thing I try to look for is, are they comfortable with their body? How confident they are with their body? Because at the end of the day, if I don't have to call you fat in the bed, it'll be a little bit of disappointment, but it'll be a bad disappointment if like I can't play with your fat, massage your fat, just like get, like acknowledge, or just like, even not even just saying like I love how fat you are, but just being like, just admiring your body. If you feel uncomfortable doing that because you're fat, it's not gonna work with me.
It's such a buzzkill. It's such a buzzkill because I've had interactions like that too. And one guy kept asking me, "Why do you keep grabbing my fat?" And I'm like, "Because I like it." It's like, but he got really uncomfortable. He's like, "Well, I don't." It's like, it got so frustrating, because it's like, I just want to worship your body, and you're not letting me do it.
Now, body worship. Mm. Listen, let me tell you this straight up right now to anyone listening. I don't need penetration. I don't need penetrative sex. I don't need oral. I don't need anything like that for me to determine that quote unquote gainer sex or gainer play was satisfactory. So long as you get into my body, you worship it, you play with it, you engage with it, I will waddle away from that a very satisfied chubby boy. And I guarantee that if you are into it, I encourage you, please get into my vat, because it feels so fucking good when people just get into it. And I've shared this story on the podcast before. I was playing with a chub who they weren't not confident in their body. And I had to set them aside and be like, I really like this. So I'm going to challenge you. Give me 30 minutes. Don't say anything. Be quiet. Let me do my thing. And at the end of all of it, you can tell me what you really, honest to God, felt about that situation. And it was amazing, because honestly, 5 minutes in, he was moaning. And that's not to be all this about it. But honestly, when he was presented with a moment to say, stop the voices, stop the crap, just experience.
Relax.
He was then able to go, oh, this doesn't tickle because I'm ticklish. This tickles because this feels really good. And actually, when you lean into the pleasure, you then realize, oh, that's what that is. Like, I've said this before, since getting fatter, like, my nipples actually do something now. They never used to, sis.
I've heard about that. I've always been curious about that. I've heard about so many people say that.
It's the fucking truth, girl. My chest used to do nothing for me. Now, my nipples, they are kryptonite, goddammit. Like, if I'm sitting there like I want to edge, but that guy goes to my nipples, I've got 10 seconds before it's all over Red Rover, because I am weak. Weak at the nipples. The fat has made me weak. But also, how glorious. Fat is transforming my body in a way that I never could have predicted. It's something new about myself. It is literally the definition of transformative. So therefore, even my own sexual experience in my body is changing. And not in a way that's bad, in a way that's fun. It's a discovery. That's why the body worship and exploration is actually so good. Because just like with Chub Dude that I hooked up with all those years ago, I helped him to find erotic pleasure zones in his body he didn't know he had. And I guarantee you, because boys are boys, now that he knows that's there, he would have been touching that every good and goddamn time. He would have been begging boys to go for that every good and goddamn time, because now he knows what feels good. So there is a very political thing in body worship and in fat adoration.
Like, I used to hook up with this one guy who he started off like on the smaller side. I think he was about maybe 260, right? And then he left town
On the
for a while.
smaller side?
Well, I mean, to people like us. But, so about 260, had a decent belly. It was, it was a little bit more dispersed. It was more like that sort of flabby all over.
Oh.
Moved out of town for a while, came back, and he wanted to start hooking up again. It was the first time I had seen him in like 3 years or something like that. And when I went to go meet him at the hotel he was staying at, he had ballooned. I mean, he had gone like almost to 400 pounds, and
oh wow,
his belly was huge, and to the point where it was hanging out the bottom of his shirt, and that's how he answered the door. And I don't think I said anything. I think I just attacked him.
Oh my God.
I just got all into him. And he had not had anyone play with his body since it got that big, and here I am, just worship streaming out of my mouth, and get his compliments, and like, oh my God, it's so fucking beautiful. There's so much, and just playing and loving it. And like James was saying, the moans that I got out of this guy was because he'd never had anyone touch him like that before. And when it was all over, he's like, wow, no one has ever done that. Like, and that's a crime, because they should have been.
I think it is always important to remember that politically, fat is not approved of in the wider world, and we all come back to that. It's like you said, there is a privilege you hold in the community and in the world being a slimmer person. And it's important to understand that in how you interact with fat people, especially if you take a fat person out on a date. The simple things like, if you were going to drive them to the restaurant, think about how far away parking is from the restaurant. Have you been to this restaurant before? What's the seating like at this restaurant? Because maybe they're a smaller person, 200 to 250, or maybe they're a very big person, 500 plus. You need to know what kind of seating you are accounting for. If you're going to buy them dinner, account for the fact that they may want extra dinner, girl. They may entree and the side plate and the dessert, and they may want to have a coffee afterwards, and then they may want to do round two at another joint after the fact. It's like, you've got to always think of those little things. And I think a good summation point here about this whole body worship moment is, it is a crime that so many fat people do not know how sexy and how sensual their bodies can be, both to other people and to themselves. That comes
absolutely
because of our society. It is fat phobic, and it does that to people. But that is why it is so important, when we have the opportunity to worship on someone, we go in there with guns a-blazing. We go in there to show them a good fucking time. Because you never know that you might be the very first person who worshipped someone, who made them feel glorious, who made them feel like they could be sexual, who gave them the permission to feel sexy in their fatter body. Because we in the gaining community have a privilege over non-gainer fats. Because we know the joke, we know the humor, we know the truth of it, we know it's sexy, that's why we're doing this. Other folk don't know this. So we all have a role to play there. And so, listeners, take this as the moment. We all need to do our part. So when you have an opportunity, take it with both hands, literally, and do the right thing by people. Love on them, build them up, encourage them, and worship them. But I do want to ask you, because we're talking obviously about the body worship, and fat is beautiful, of course. Hilarious. Yeah, here for this. But I do want to ask you, do you feel like admirers are overlooked in the community?
Yes, but in a way, it's kind of by design, because, it depends. Because, like I said, it kind of relates to what I was saying earlier. Because, like, there are fat guys that, whether they're getting or not, they like fat too, So, like, I think it kind of depends. So, if you're someone like me who is more quote unquote fit, quote unquote, you will get overlooked more than, let's just say, just average fat guy who isn't a gainer, but he loves the belly, and he himself is like 280 pounds, So like there is that, and interesting because the dynamics too between admirers, especially if you're skinnier, are a little bit different too. And just that whole, it's very interesting in general, just being a thinner thinner admirer. So like because of that, I do get a little more overlooked and stuff. And it's sometimes I also feel like at least um I have seen this, I feel like a little bit, and I know that, in fact, I've heard of this and I've known this. I feel like there are some admirers that like necessarily, they don't want necessarily to like get fat or whatever, but they feel kind of pressured to be somewhat of that aesthetic, whether it's fatter or more muscular or just get bigger somehow, especially if you're like being in this community or being in the bear community or being in the chub community. It's because I face that myself, you know, like because some of my friends who aren't in the community, they be like, I'll be like, I'm so skinny, and they'll be like, Trey, what the fuck you're talking about? And I'm just like, but when I say that, they don't know that I'm comparing myself to y'all, you know, or to some muscle bears, or you know, is it like not to like general, not to thin people, you know. So I think I do think that skinnier admirers get overlooked, and I think it plays an effect on, or at least for me, how we can kind of see ourselves, and also how we interact with each other in the community, especially from the thin admirer to thin admirer, thin admirer to thin chaser, etc., thin etc. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Something I want to ask about. It's interesting you said this because I feel like I've been hearing this a lot lately. People who aren't gainers that are in the community feel an expectation to eventually gain.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think, don't get me wrong, there is the example of someone who enters the community a little bit timidly. They introduce themselves as encouragers. They just want to help other people get fat. And eventually they catch the gaining bug and become gainers themselves. The joke is feeders who are like, there weren't any gainers around to feed, so I just fed myself, and now look at it. Like,
right. Mm-hmm.
And I'm not against that narrative. That definitely applies to some people, and, you know, that will continue to apply to a cohort of people because that's their personal way of understanding their own gaining journey. They had to do the other role first and find their way into it. That is valid and that is fine. But other people are not like that. Other people are fat and happen to be encouragers / feeders / admirers, but they're not intending to gain. They just happen to exist in a fatter body. But other folk like yourself are that, but in a skinny body. And I just find that really interesting that there is this community expectation to gain. And I think this brings up a point that we've kind of touched on a little bit in previous episodes, which is that yes, gaining, by virtue of it being the gaining community, gaining and gainers will always take center stage. And let's be honest, as we were saying, in a fat-phobic world, politically, it is correct and important that we take center stage and validate that at every turning, because we still need to do the work. We still need to put that forward and put that out there. But there is something to be said because we are all in the know. We all know what's going on when it comes to gaining. We all know what it means to gain. So what does it mean then when we speak to our slimmer compatriots and we place an expectation of growth? Sometimes we don't read a profile and we make an expectation and we go, oh, you're probably just a baby gainer. Maybe you haven't started your journey yet. Maybe you're still feeling it out, da-da-da-da-da-da. But other people are just here to vibe, doing what they do, no intention to necessarily get bigger. So you said you've experienced some of that, yes?
Absolutely. Like on my Grommr profile, I believe it does say I'm a muscle gainer because I do like going to the gym. And to me, I'm kind of like, if I did get fat, okay. But to me, I've always like, because like you've asked this, like when we first met, you asked what my goal was, and like my body goal is, I said to be like the Black Kobe Jansen, but or anyone who doesn't know who that is, or it's just, well, I hope a lot of people probably know who Kobe Jansen is, but like besides doing porn and shit, he was also a rugby player, like a professional rugby player. And so it's just like, to me, I wish I could get that built of a rugby player than necessarily that like tall, slim basketball player type of build, you know? Because like, to me, I think for me as in Trey, that is the pinnacle of what would look good to me. Now, if I get fat on top of that, okay, but I'm not trying to get like a big belly and to get necessarily fat, you know. That being said, I also know it's kind of hypocritical in some ways because I admire that, but like it's more of I admire that on someone else, you know. And also too,
Exactly.
I've been thin my entire life, so like I don't know how I would feel if that would happen. I wouldn't want to do that unless it was of my choice. And I think that other people should respect that, you know.
Yes. And there's nothing hypocritical about that, honestly, because I it's perfectly fine to want your body to be the way you want it to be. That's why James and I are gainers, because we didn't like our bodies as they were and we wanted to change it. Conversely, if you want to be a thin person and just admire, love, encourage, and whatever with a gainer or a chubby person, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's cool that you have the point of view like, okay, well, if I get fat, that's fine, but I'm not actively seeking it out, you know.
The next thing I really wanted to ask is, because a lot of gainers find that they make friends and develop connections with other gainers really easily based on that mutual attraction and appreciation. But what are the connections like between admirers? Is there a community amongst you guys, or is it more viewed as competition? Like, what is the vibe amongst admirers?
I guess I can tell from my experience. Like I've said earlier, I met a couple of really good people in my life, they're pretty close to me, because, and that was like the shared thing that we have. Like we all admire fat, or so we're somewhat part of the bear community or gaining community. You know, we all are under that umbrella, and like quite a few of them are slimmer, you know, or towards the slim side of builds, you know.
It makes sense that in a community where, and again, gainers front and center, the interactions between other parties are probably going to be minimal, because as a community, we don't frame a lot of reason for you guys to interact. So I wondered to myself, what as a community can we do to encourage engagement with like-minded persons, you know, in a positive way that maybe doesn't frame it like a negative thing. We do have some listener questions if you're feeling prepped and
Absolutely.
answer.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So one of the questions we have here is, what is the best piece of advice you could give someone who is new to admiring?
Okay, so to me, that's you fully acknowledge that you like fat. Now, in terms of, I will say, like, even to me, I'm still going through this journey, because I've been because I got out of a relationship a while ago with a civilian, and now being back in the gaining community and stuff, I myself are relearning how to do this. But you have to learn how to feel comfortable and acknowledging, I won't say fat fetish, for your admiration for fat.
The other question, part of admiring seems to put gainers on a platform, which leads to this celebrity idea that some folk adhere to. Do we need to explore using other terms like enabler? Now, we kind of spoke to this a little bit at the start of the episode, you know, that there is this new trend of terms coming around, people using new terms to explore these ideas a bit more. Do you think that there is something in admiring that maybe needs an inherent change? Or is that maybe not where the problem lies? What do you think?
I think we need to talk about a little bit of what admiring entails, literally, because everyone does it differently. Everyone goes through it differently. I also do think in terms of the celebrity of it, I think that's also kind of a different conversation in it myself, because I think that there goes to a lot about like social media image and all that, because that also kind of plays a part of I think of that bigorexia thing for like a lot of skinnier folk in the community. Does that make sense? Sorry.
Yeah, it does. No, it does. When you mentioned the celebrity thing and how it puts certain gainers on a pedestal, we've talked about how that can lead to some toxic behavior on some people's parts. Like there are some gainers who have taken celebrity and run with it and have not done very well with it, have not been good representation. So, if a day comes where James and I are placed on that same pedestal, I think the difference between us and, say, someone else that has been gifted that title, we are striving to constantly give back. We're trying to build the community up rather than just sit there on the pedestal and accept all the worship and adoration and be like, yeah, I'm amazing. I know it. Go ahead. Keep telling me. But, we're trying, and I'm hoping that we are succeeding in creating the kind of atmosphere that fosters more of a sense of, okay, I love that you think of me that way, but you're great too, and so is everyone else, and we're all part of the same tribe here because we're all into the same thing, so we're all in the same boat,
Yeah, and I honestly appreciate it because just to get a tiny bit personal, like I said, like I haven't been in the community for a while because I was in a relationship with a civilian, and I've had to build new connections because a lot of them that I've had in the past, it's different now. It's been years since I've seen them. I've only seen them a couple times, and when both you and James would be doing Instagram lives, whenever I had time, I just either just be listening to it or be watching it, and I started talking, and then next thing you know, James invited me, and I met y'all, and I appreciate it because y'all helped me get back into this community and also kind of get back to owning my own sexual self and what it means to me, and I highly appreciate it. Keep doing what y'all doing. Y'all doing good work. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Yes, thank you for the kind words. And honestly, like I think that's the biggest distinction of all of this. Admiration is not just in this community when it comes to, oh, look at you, you've gotten fat. Congratulations. Admiration is, look at what you're doing as a person. You, on your gaining journey, this has evoked more confidence in you. And I'm so glad to see that, this has evoked a new sense of sensuality and a sense of your gender and a sense of your sense of self. It's evoked more of your authenticity, and it's wonderful to see. It's very much that vibe of, I love to see my friends succeed. But they're the ones who are making the millions now. They're the ones with their names up in lights. Yes, it is. And I love to see it. They're an incredible person and they deserve it. I wouldn't be friends with someone who didn't deserve it and who was an asshole. So in that same vein of thought, I love to see my friends succeed, and I love to see people in our community succeed, whether that's in the public eye or just on their personal journeys of growth, both physical and emotional and mental and spiritual. And it's all of that rolled in together. So truly, thank you for your words, Trey. They really mean a lot.
Absolutely.
So I kind of want to ask this. We've touched on this for a moment, I think. Do you think that there is a quintessential difference between how you approach a gainer versus how you approach a non-gainer chub?
Absolutely. 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 The acknowledgement. So going back to earlier when I said like the first thing I read is how comfortable, like after I guess do that look, and when the moment where my admiration turns me to a chaser, when I look at you, I guess physically, and read your body language, see how, like, just read the person, after I determine like, oh, that person's hot, I might want to talk to them or whatnot. The first thing I look for is how confident they are with their fatness. Quite honestly, because once again, I meet a lot of people more in person than necessarily online, so I see more non-gainer folk. So like with non-gainer folk, I have to handle that situation with trepidation. And I think even for me, like, I think my part of the reason my last relationship was starting to not work with that civilian is because I started noticing that he wasn't that confident in his body as much as he seemed. So to me, that was a big turnoff, While with gainer folk, it's acknowledged, they're actively trying to do it, and then my admiration will make me be like, well, I kind of want to see what you can do. Can I feed you? Can we go somewhere to eat? Can we just hang out? You eat, I might eat a little bit, give you some belly rubs, give you a massage, and my comfortability goes way up. Because I know just in the fact that I can, even though I do know, once again, you were saying earlier, language is a thing. Some fat guys don't want to be called pig and all that or whatever, but just the acknowledgement that I find that that I find your fat sexy, and then you think your fat is sexy too, and then you're getting fatter because of that. It's explosion. The end. I'm going after that. So like, to me, it's just is a lot different for me because I can let go way easier than necessarily with non-gainer folk,
We do have one more question for you, which is, as an admirer, what's one thing you want to see changed in the community?
I want people to be willing to meet people more, because I think, granted, everyone's journey is different, but I can tell you from experience that that just meeting other people in this community, that is what has made me feel more confident and made me be like, yeah, I like fat. That's my thing. That's my kink. This is my community. I love it. I want to be a part of it.
That's actually it for now on Thicc Radio. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram on mochanication. It's spelled mocha, Nication. You can find me on Grommr with crazychunkycool, like the TLC album, Crazy Sexy Cool, but instead of sexy, it's chunky. And yeah, I'm a shy person, but at the same time, give me a message. I'm a friendly guy.
Beautiful. Well, that's a wrap for now here on Thicc Radio. Please remember to like and subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and leave a good review. If you like this episode, the podcast, or just us in general, share it with your friends and encourage them to tune in. As always, you can find me on Grommr, Instagram, and TikTok at stannnum, and Twitter and YouTube at stannnumg.
And you can find me on Grommr as Orpheus. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok at thiccmouse. And of course, you can find more of what we've talked about today on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Patreon at Thicc Radio. So until next time, bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Let's talk about it.
Thicc Radio is a Patreon and Anchor app podcast produced by Stan and Thicky Mouse.
Mixed and mastered by Stannnum.
Our artwork is provided by Lokitu.
Our theme song is provided by Body by Cream.